Okay, so government failure. So I've already hinted a few times that obviously, often governments get things wrong, and that's sad. So governments can make their own errors when they're trying to, for example, information. Governments are not all knowing, they get things wrong too. So sometimes governments can intervene in the wrong way because they've got the wrong information. The other thing is administrative costs. So whenever governments intervene, they need to employ people to manage the intervention. They need to employ people to come up with and enforce the regulations, enforce the minimum prices, go and collect the taxes, make sure the people are keeping to the taxes, punish people if they don't keep to the taxes. There are administrative costs, which start off small, but before you know it, this can be a few percent of your economy is in administrative costs. I mean, it's not that inconceivable when a lot of governments in the developed world are like, government spending is often 40-45%, sometimes more, of GDP. So it's not that odd that a notable chunk is, if a notable chunk of that is administrative spending, then that's a notable chunk of the whole economy. And that's also an issue which can take away from efficiency as well, because that's not being used to produce stuff directly. It's just being used to intervene in the hope of making it better. But if the improvement is less than the administrative cost, then generally we'd say, okay, that's not a net benefit. The other thing is unintended consequences, which is also kind of an information gaps issue. Governments do not know everything. They can make mistakes. They can end up with unintended consequences down the road. Like, for example, I talked about last time, the last video, you can have government information campaigns to reduce saturated fat intake, because that was seen as a risk of like artery clotting and whatnot. But it looks like as a result of reduce saturated fat intake and increase your carbohydrate intake, now we have big increase in obesity and diabetes, and that there's potential link there. So that's a candidate for government failure. And then we also have distortion of price signals. So whenever government is going to intervene, obviously that's going to impose costs on companies for different things, which means that the price is no longer going to reflect the like natural cost versus natural benefit of things. It's going to result from whatever the costs and demand were before the government intervenes, plus the result of the government intervention. So hopefully that's good a lot of the time if the government's correctly estimated what the missing benefits and costs are. But if government's being a bit like a bull in a china shop, then it's messing up the old signals and not necessarily improving things. Now, what is this government failure? Government failure to do what? Well, just as we thought market failure was failure of the market to maximize social welfare based on how we defined social welfare, the problem with government failure is, did it not maximize social welfare? And whether you're distorting price signals, you have unintended consequences, you have too big administrative costs, or you have gaps in how you're doing things in the information of what's best as the government, this could all result in your intervention not being optimal. So I'll write them all up on the board just so you can catch them. So we have administrative costs in no particular order. We have information gaps. We have unintended consequences, and we have whatever the other one was, distortion of price signals. And that's that. There we are. All right, and that's causes of government failure. And then the result is, hey, the intervention's not actually going to be maximizing welfare, societal welfare.